getting yourself in a position where you feel like you've got everything under control and you understand yourself fully and all of these things, that isn't a linear process.
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it. Hello, my beautiful sisters. On today's episode of A Sister's Love podcast, we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Dr. Florencia. She is a licensed psychologist, and she specializes in helping women who are in unfulfilling relationships and who wants to break relationship patterns. But before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. I am Rose Jones. I am your host here at A Sister's Love podcast, and I am just one woman with one story, and I'm just trying to use my story to inspire other women to heal and grow and become the best version of themselves. So if you are looking to be part of a community that's supported and loving and a community that is all about healing, then you are in the right place. I would love you to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode of a Sisters Love podcast. Hello, everybody. I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Dr. Florencia, and I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell the listeners a little bit about your background and how you got into what you're doing, like being a psychologist and helping women in relationships.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. So my name is Dr. Florencia, and I'm a licensed counseling psychologist and a relationship coach. And I help women, especially women of color, change their unfulfilling relationship and dating experiences and habits, and provide them psychological tools to create the relationships that they desire and to transform their lives. Because more often than not, especially with women of color, we have gone through a lot of trauma, whether it's interpersonally, whether it's generationally, whether it's systemically, or all the above. We often just survive rather than thrive. And so I want to help women to overcome that and live their best lives. So that is what I do. Now, how I got into it, I mean, like I said, as a psychologist, obviously I went through my training, and initially I worked in community settings, and I don't know what it is. I mean, as a therapist, we kind of believe in something like, it's not necessarily manifestation, but we always say that you will find the clients who are best suited to you. Like, the clients that you need will gravitate towards you regardless. So what I noticed was, as I started my training, was that I was continuously seeing women of color who are, from quite marginalized, socially marginalized backgrounds. And they may come to me for anxiety, depression, personality disorders, etc. But at the core of it all always stemmed from attachment trauma. So, they're a trauma that they've experienced growing up as a child, in relation to their parents, for instance, or like close family members, and that then seep into how they relate as an adult, like how they seek, relationships, how they understand and perceive relationships. And more often than not, they find themselves in very traumatic situations when it comes to relationships. And that kept happening over year after year. And I was thinking to myself, there is something here. There's something here that I need to explore more. So earlier this year, I started to develop a service, or a private service, specifically aiming to help women of color deal with, like I said, with relationships and relationships trauma, and helping them overcome that. Yeah.
That is awesome. Like, that's kind of like my same experience. Like, I used to work in nursing a lot, and then even when I was working in nursing, like, some people just kept attracted to me. Like, all the people that, like, I've been through domestic violence myself, and I've been through a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, people kept navigating to me. They kept telling me their story, kept telling me, and I, for some reason, because I started to be overcome, became a resource for them, and then just a lot of people just kept navigating towards me, and I was like, yeah, it's a reason why these people are navigating towards me. I have to do something about it, and that's when I just like kind of just did the podcast and things like that. Like, I have to be a resource to these people because for some reason, some why they keep finding me, even when I'm not even talking about my story. They find me and I'm like, I don't even tell nobody. Like, I'm very, like, I keep it to myself. At that time, I was keeping it to myself. I wasn't open about it. And everybody just kept navigating to me. I'm like, oh, these is my people. You know, they're definitely my people. So I totally understand that aspect of that. Like, when your people will find you regardless if you're looking for them or not. They will
Right.
find you. Yeah, they will find you. Now, can you
Absolutely.
go into a little bit deeper of what is attachment styles and how people can develop them?
Yeah, sure. Well, without going into too much detail, because we can have a whole episode just talking about attachment styles, but from a very basic standpoint, as children, our first examples of what a relationship looks like. Oh, Rose, are you still there?
So there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right then. Okay. So shall I start over?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Start over, please.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so as children, our first examples of relationships and what it looks like, what it feels like, what it means is the relationship that we have with our parents or our primary caregivers, right? So that is where attachment is formed. Now, if for instance you've got a very disciplinarian, type of authoritarian, parent, or a parent that is emotionally not available, or a parent that is inconsistent. One day they're happy to see you and happy to be around you, do everything for you, and then the next day, all they want to do is punish you and or not be around you or dismiss you or ignore you or whatever the case may be, right? So all of these things and all of these experiences forms how we attach as adults. So you've got four or well, we've got three type of attachment styles. So you've got the anxious, you've got the avoidant, and then you've got secure. So depending on, again, your childhood experience, and also depending on how much of that is still kind of like lingering in the way that you view attachments, that then informs where on the spectrum you are. But I do like to say that attachment styles is not something that is set in stone. I've definitely seen clients, and I've experienced clients who were initially, for example, anxiously attached, but then through working with me, or through some healthier relationships that they've encountered, they then went from anxious to secure. So it really doesn't have to mean that, okay, well, because I've experienced trauma as a child, or a traumatic attachment as a child, that means that that's it for life. No, that it's absolutely not the case. You can definitely work on it, you can definitely change it. And also, like, in some relationships, you might feel more anxiously or insecurely attached than perhaps in other relationships, right? So it really does differ. So it is fluid in that way. So yeah, does that
So
does that paint you a good
yeah,
picture?
yeah. So I could be clear. So like ancient attachment is like when you're overly attached to something or someone, like you scared to let them go, right? Like you're scared to let go of the situation. You're scared to move away from a situation because you think that you won't be able to have another relationship or be able to secure something like that ever again. And avoidance is like you're avoiding situations, you're avoiding the attachment with that person. So when someone get close, you're kind of like running away from the situation, right? And
Yes,
secure is like a good balance. It's like a good balance between both. Like
yes,
I know
yes.
when to go and I know when to stay.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
That is absolutely it. And there's a fourth one, but I didn't want to go into that one. But that one is dissociative. So that is kind of like a mixture of
Yeah, that's
everything.
what I was gonna ask next. Like, is it a possibility for you to have be two different type of attachment style? Because I think
Yes.
that's kind of like me in some relationships. I'd be like, "Oh, I really love you," and I'm like, "Yo, get like back up, like you too close." Like, but I crave this closeness, and then I get it, and then I'm like, "No, I gotta
Mhm.
go this way. I gotta get away because of the trauma that I experienced." Like, yeah. And I'm not 100% sure that this is something that I really want or I'm able to secure. So I'm going to pull away or I'm going to push that person away. So I definitely think I'm just that one, like the last one. In some
Mhm.
relationships, like it's a relationship where I'm really secure. And two, like you said, it's like a balance, but I'm still like in my process. So I'm balancing, trying to make 90% of relationships more secure relationships, but it's still a working process. So
Yeah.
I I totally understand and see how that happened because the relationship that I had with my parents is really like they're more like avoiding. My parents was like my dad was around, but then he did what he wanted to do. And he came back whenever he felt like it. Like, and they was married. He was like, but he secured the house, if that makes sense. He'll come home, make sure all the bills and everything was paid. But then when it came to emotional balance with us and spending time with us, he left that up to my mom. And then once they kind of like started to separate, my mom like, I got freedom now. Take your kids. So she started to run the street and start doing what she wanted to do, and she forgot about us, you know. So we like our parents was like they kind of bounced back and forth, and then my father wanted to do him and then she wanted to do us, and then we pretty much just started to like raise ourselves. So
Mhm.
so I'm like, I'm bouncing between because one minute they secure and one minute they're not. Next minute they're like, forget us. And next minute, like, oh, we love y'all. But financially, they always took care of us. That was the craziest thing. And I'm like, I hold on to that lot. Like when it comes to finances, I hold that down. And that's because my dad was he was a good financial supporter, and so was my mom. And that
Mhm.
is like my heaviest point. Like when it comes down to supporting the family, I can do that. But that emotional support and stuff like that, I want to be there 100%, but it's hard. So I kind of,
Mhm.
yeah, I get it. I get how it can root from your childhood and stuff like that. It's like the things that I'm exploring right now in my healing process. So,
Yeah. Yes, no, absolutely. No, I can relate in the sense that, I have got a anxious attachment, or I've developed an anxious attachment, but that is because, in my childhood experience, I was raised between two households. So I mean, it's not necessarily a foster family, but they were looking after me, and they were of a white ethnic background, and they were middle class, and my the reason for that was that I am of Ghanaian descent, so I'm a second generation migrant. And when my parents came to Holland, that is where I'm originally from. When they came to Holland, like as most immigrants, they had like three very low paid laborers, jobs, and they were just going from job to job, and they were rarely home. So they weren't in the best position to look after me. So what they did was to, pretty much give me up for care by this family. And yeah, they looked after me there, and they were great. I still have contact with them every now and then. But what that did was, because I was going between two environments who were the polar opposite, right? Because white family in a suburb, I was going to an all-white school, like the whole school, there was probably like five black kids, right? And because of that, I was heavily, heavily bullied, right? So I didn't fit anywhere and didn't have a sense of belonging. And then in my biological family, or in that environment, obviously, like I said, working class, didn't have much, in a very ethnically diverse neighborhood, but there was quite a bit of crime, and wasn't very safe. And because I was raised in a different environment, and I developed kind of like a different accent, I spoke in a different way. I kind of like, my mannerisms were a bit different. I didn't really belong there either. And on top of that, like my mother which is actually at the core of a lot of the difficulties that I developed as an adult. She has an undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. And yeah, so
Yeah.
and like I said, it's undiagnosed. So and I don't think she will ever get it diagnosed. But anyway, that's a different topic altogether. But so yeah, like our relationship was very intense and it was very damaging because what she was basically doing was projecting a lot of her inner turmoil, her inner like self-hatred onto me because I was the only child in that household. So I was literally the only kind of like punching bag for her to get her frustrations and confusion out. So can you just see how having
Yeah.
those experiences, like you're literally just being split and there is no environment where I can be completely safe, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So that informed how I developed relationships, going into adulthood. And it was really, really tough because I was seeking validation, belonging in ways that I shouldn't have,
Yeah.
as a child as well. All you're trying to do is trying to navigate life. And obviously, you have a very limited understanding of what's going on and what is appropriate, what's not. And I kind of like just had to figure things out. And that's, led to me being in situations that were incredibly, incredibly harmful to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What I learned about attachment styles is that we attach to things that make us feel safe, regardless if it's making us feel safe or not.
Right.
That's the yeah. Like it might not physically make us safe, but emotionally, somehow, some way, it's making us feel safe. So some need in some aspect is being getting met. So we're gonna move forward in this behavior because it makes us feel safe in some aspect. Um, I have one question for you. Now, while you were talking about the undiagnosed narcissist, do you think mental health plays a big part in someone attachment style, like someone that has like ADHD? It do it could come across as like a avoidance attachment style, but it might not be because of their diagnosed ADHD, and they might think that, oh my God, I'm avoidance, but I'm really not. It's just that I haven't balanced my ADHD.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is why, especially when it comes to people of color, especially Black people, right? Like something like ADHD, ASD, all of those kind of like neurological kind of difficulties that often gets left undiagnosed, and then we kind of, or professionals kind of, push it off and just say, oh, it's just a behavioral issue, or that it's just how they are wired or whatever it is. But that is, more often than not, that is just not the case, where we just don't really get the appropriate diagnoses in those cases. So yeah, it can definitely
So
impact.
in a so in a situation like that, you will work with someone. They have to work through their ADHD management first before they can work on their attachment styles, or can they work on both of them at the same time?
I think you can work both of them at the same time. But if we look at therapy, more often than not, you'll have one focus of work.
Mhm.
And then, everything else around it will get impacted by it. It's kind of like a domino effect, right? So, or it has like a trickle down effect rather, so if you focus on, let's say, if you focus on the, ADHD management, more often than not, the relational and attachment kind of aspect of things will also be worked on because it is a relationship, right, at the end of
Yeah.
the day. So that is how the attachment can then get worked through. So, it kind of like it goes hand in hand, but you do pick a specific kind of area that you want to work on.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like a bar. Like everything's usually kind of attached to everything. So when you work on one area of your life, it's usually affecting other areas without you knowing. So like you're doing the work without you're not like, oh, all of a sudden I'm having better relationships. And I thought it was just my ADHD, but it's like it's helping other areas of my life. So I totally
Right.
understand that.
Right.
Can you go into some ways that people can help themselves work through like different types of avoidant attachment styles and how to become a secure? That's the best question. Can you give some people some advice on how to become a secure attachment style?
Yes. So I mean, there are different ways of going on that journey, because it is a journey, right? I mean, healing and getting yourself in a position where you feel like you've got everything under control, and you understand yourself fully, and all of these things, that isn't a linear process. So there are different ways that you would need to address, but what you can start off with is developing a better relationship with yourself, because more often than not, we, especially when you look at the developmental aspect of things, how we view ourselves, our self-image, is shaped and molded based off of our childhood experiences. So, for instance, if you've had quite, negative experiences growing up, whether, mom and dad weren't consistently around, or your emotions were often not taken seriously, or they were dismissed or not acted on, all of these things, or you've had a very critical parent, and whatever you did or didn't do, it was never good enough, right? That you soak all of that up, and it becomes your kind of prototype in terms of understanding yourself. So now, as adults, we walk around being our own, like, worst enemy at times, because we can have such a toxic kind of relationship with ourselves, in a way that we even speak about ourselves, whether it's in our minds or even out loud, can be incredibly damaging. And so that is where I would say, start there. Start to notice your inner dialogue. What are you saying to yourself? What are you not saying to yourself? How can you be more passionate for yourself? When you do notice yourself saying quite, harmful things to yourself, about yourself, challenge that, because essentially what you need to do is reparenting yourself. So you need to imagine, if I saw my niece or my nephew saying these things about themselves, what would you do? More often than not, you would step in, right? You would say, oh no, don't say that, that's not nice, or whatever. And then, affirm them. You'd say, no, you are beautiful, or oh no, you're fine. And or oh yeah, I understand that, that you're upset, or whatever, and that's okay. It's okay to be upset. Like that has a completely different tone, right? And you need to apply that tone to yourself, because you need to rewire your brain into thinking that, being you, just as who you are and how you show up, is okay. And it's safe to do so. So that is how you would start the
Yeah.
journey.
I do root chasing. I don't know if that's what it's called, but like when I have thoughts like of self-doubt or like when I feel like I'm not enough, I try to chase it down.
Oh, I don't know if it's me or if it's you. Mhm.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you
Oh my
now.
God, this Wi-Fi is acting up today. I'm gonna start over. I said, what I do when it comes to like when I have like negative thoughts about my self-worth or not feeling good enough, I do root chasing. I don't know if that's what it's called, but like I try to get down to the root of where the thoughts came from, where I first heard it, and try to disassociate myself from that root. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not my problem. This was this person's problem. And then I try to empathize with the person on why they why they attach that to me, why they said that to me, and then get me in a better place of empathy. Like, oh, this person was going through what they're going through, and what they said is more about them and less about me. So I don't have to hold on to that, and I can let that go, and I can move forward in my life.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And do you know what? And now that now you mentioned it, that actually brought something into mind as well about, like self-doubt, for instance. More often than not, self-doubt or like anxious thoughts, worrying, that is a form of protecting yourself from danger, right? That is how we survive, right? But sometimes the anxiousness is misplaced, right? So for instance, I've got a fear of public speaking. I don't like public speaking. Hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. So but like I push myself. I try to expand myself by exposing myself. So, for instance, coming onto the podcast and chatting to
Me too.
you today, for
Yeah.
instance, right? Or
Oh,
going out and speaking at talks. I mean, before going on into the room and speaking in that room, I'll be pacing up and down, sweating my bum off because I'm so anxious, right? And all of the thoughts going to my mind about, oh my God, yeah, but what if you say something silly, or what if you fall, or what if, right? But all of that is just my brain trying to keep me safe. But
yeah.
that doesn't mean that I can't choose to expand myself and have that experience, because it's what I want to do for myself, or
Mm.
it's what I feel like I need to do for myself. So you shouldn't limit yourself based off of your thoughts, because thoughts, you can choose to how to engage with those thoughts as well. Yeah.
I totally agree with that because we feel like fear is meant to protect us, but a lot of people don't understand that fear is also a driving point too. It's like it's a double-edged sword. Like, it's here to protect us from things that can physically or mentally harm us, but at the same time it's a pushing force to get us towards something that, like, it's coming up, like exploring the fear. Like, what is this fear actually telling me? Is it telling me to run and hide because this person is going to hurt me? Or is it telling me that this is something that I never did before? So we're scared because we never experienced this before, not because it's actually dangerous. It's actually just some territory that we never explored before. So we don't know
Mm,
what to do here. So the best thing to do is avoid it. But
mm,
if it's something that you really do, it's not okay to keep avoiding things, because then as society, as human beings, we are meant to grow and change and elevate. And if you keep running from things, you're going to find yourself in a place of darkness and unsatisfactory. Because how I see it, if you're not growing, you're dying, you're going backwards, and you don't want to go backwards in your life. We're meant to move forward. So I think that we should explore the fear more than just let it take over, you know?
yes, absolutely. And that is a really great point. And you can even tie that into your experiences of relationships, because some people, again, being gravitating towards what feels familiar, maybe what feels familiar to them is chaos, is inconsistency, is, just harmful dynamics, right? But if they encounter someone who is very reliable, who is very patient, who is very kind, who is very warm, that feels foreign, right? So then again, immediately in our brains, we're thinking, oh yeah, but that can't be right. That's not right. So then then we try to find the nearest exit, right? Because it feels foreign. But actually, what you then have to do is to lean in. Are you gone again?
Okay, we're back. I'm literally, if this does it again, I'm hooked up to my private Wi-Fi because I'm in my office, and for some reason The Wi-Fi is just bouncing in and out. But okay, if it happens again, I'm just gonna hook up to I have a private Wi-Fi if it does it again.
Okay.
But we're almost over anyway, so you can
Okay.
finish. Okay, I'm sorry.
What was the last bit that you heard?
You were talking about, damn, my mind just slipped out.
Because I don't necessarily want to repeat some of the bits, for
You can
editing
repeat it.
purposes.
I'll just edit it if you have to, or you can just start from a point that you know you said, and we'll
Okay.
just edit it together. Yeah.
Okay, then. All right, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, Let me have a think. Yeah, so it's so if you gravitate towards, what feels familiar, right? And you're trying to run away from what feels unfamiliar, although safe, it's a learned behavior, and it's essentially you just don't know what to do with it, right? So that is something also to be very mindful of. And again, I would encourage you to have that inner dialogue with yourself, and to fact check, look for evidence, like, are my worries, are they valid? And if they are valid, but what was that based on? And is that something that you can work on? Is that something that can involve a conversation rather than just heading for the exit, right? So yeah, it does require like healing and trying to work through these difficulties, especially with relationships, because people are very complex, right? It is
Yeah.
difficult, but with determination and time, you'll get there.
What I learned about relationship is like, especially like me, I've been in domestic violence relationship. There's like people that have been in like unhealthy relationship, like they're repeating their first relationship over and over. Like that first bad experience is like on repeat. And until you go back and heal that original relationship that you had, or that relationship you had inside yourself in that situation, it will stay on repeat. So no matter
Mm-hmm.
if you come in contact with something more secure, come in contact with things that can help you change until you can fully heal or combat that relationship, that it will keep repeating itself because you have to learn the lessons from that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if y'all listening, like I really like if you have like if you're in really difficult relationship situations, try to find, like I said, go do your root search to the root of where all your relationship problems started. Usually childhood parents, saying some people might think it's like I was good, I had good parents and stuff like that, but it could have been something inside that relationship that created a doubt or self-worth challenge that you need to explore so that you can fully love yourself and fully show up in relationships the way that you want to and be secure of yourself, because you have to first have a secure relationship with self before you have a secure relationship with anybody else. So,
Absolutely.
so secure in that relationship with yourself and then secure in relationship with other people. And I think that's like pretty much the root of becoming secure in relationships, right? If I'm right.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. No, absolutely right. Absolutely.
All right. Is it any advice that you would like to give the is it any advice that you would like to give the listeners before we end?
Any advice? I mean, yeah, there's lots of advice I could give, but in terms of relationships, I would say my first thing would be, and I've already, said this, but it's always worth emphasizing this. The work starts with you first. You have to work work through and understand the root cause of why it is that you're experiencing, and then once you've had that understanding, then seek to have control or power over the decisions that you make as well. um and the reason why I think that is incredibly helpful is that there has been a time, for instance, with myself, but also with my client and with my clients as well. But I can speak for myself now, that I have found myself in relationships, in repeated relationships, where I was experiencing the same thing over and over and over again, like you described, right? But it wasn't until I fully understood why I was attracting the same type of person, But also my own unconscious behavior that was enabling that kind of behavior. That is when I thought, okay, so I don't have to let life happen to me. I don't have to just sit back and let that abuse happen to me. I actually do have ownership of my body, and I do have autonomy over my body. And I am now choosing to stand up for myself and not allow this to happen to me again. But it took years for me to get there, because for years I thought, oh, I've got something written on my forehead, and these men are just coming here and doing whatever, and then leaving me to it, type of thing. And there's nothing I can do. That's literally the mindset I had. That there's nothing that I can do. It is what it is. But
Yeah.
once I healed from it, but more importantly, had an understanding of what was going on, that is when I knew, okay, yeah, so I do actually have some say in what's happening to me. And
Yeah.
I don't have to, just succumb to whatever is happening to me in my life. I can take control of my life, and I'm going to take control right now. And life has really transformed for me since that moment. So
I
yeah,
actually
seek.
agree because it's like mostly like being aware. Like a lot of us, we're just like you said, we're running like on autopilot. We're letting our subconscious brain just run us and just do whatever it says go. And then to stop that is to become aware, to bring it from back here to up here and to see it for what it is. It's like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. When it's on autopilot, we're not exploring it. So just to take your time and explore, become more aware of who you are and how people are treating you and exactly how you want to be treated. Like, is this not aligned with how I want to be treated? Then why am I allowing this to happen? Like,
Mm,
where's the missed piece? Like, this is not,
mm,
I don't genuinely like this treatment, but somehow in some way I'm allowing it to happen to me. It's a missing
mm,
piece somewhere. It's finding that missing piece and linking it like, oh, it's me. I'm the missing link. I
right.
have the authority to choose. I can choose. And some people don't think that they have a choice. They just think life is the way it is. And you have the right to choose if you want to go left or right, if you want to stay here or if you want to go. So just
Mm.
making that choice.
Mm, 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 mm. Yes, and
Mhm.
I do kind of also want to name that, as a survivor of trauma, as a survivor of abuse, all kinds of abuse, right? I would never, never, ever blame the victim. It is not, but it's not about blame. It's about coming to the realization that you've got power and you need to reclaim your power. Because if you go through life feeling powerless, it's that's not life. That is not a life worth living. You need to claim your power, and you need to stand in your truth, stand in your power, and don't be afraid to use that power, because
Mhm.
that is what abusers want, right? They want us to feel hopeless, that they want us to feel dependent on them, right? But no, no, they're
Yeah.
wrong.
It's like that victim mindset. If you stay as I'm the victim, you will continue in that mindset and converting victim into victor. You know what I'm saying? I
Yes.
overcame. So now
Mm,
that I'm no longer in a situation, I have the power now. I'm the victor of this story. So I get to dictate how it moves forward. So
mm,
your mindset and all of that. So
absolutely.
before we end, I would like for you to tell the listeners what offer you have for them and how they can reach you.
Okay, so like I said at the start, I help women of color change their unfulfilling dating relationship habits and provide them psychological tools to create the relationships that they desire, but the life that they truly want. And I offer a 6 month group program, which is an intensive program. But it is an intimate program, so you will get lots of attention from me, and I will guide your hand or guide you through through your journey along with the other participants. But if you think, okay, well, actually groups are not really for me, then I also offer a one-to-one. So the one-to-one option is there for you as well. So if you're interested in that, you can apply. So if you go onto my website, drflorencia.com, you will find applications there that you can fill in, and then I will get back to you if I think you're suitable. But if you want a quick win, then you can go on to thepowerofpause.info/workbook. And what you'll find there is a partner compatibility assessment. So this is for people who are either single but dating, or they're in a new relationship, but they have noticed behavior that's a bit questionable and they're not quite sure what to do with this. So in that workbook, there are 4 steps that I guide you through to basically assess that behavior. And I've used the example on the website. I've used the example what to do if he hasn't texted you back for a while. So what do you do with that? So I literally guide you through. Okay, well, is this behavior, does that match your values? If not, why does it not match your values? And then what do you do about it? What are we gonna do, sis? Or the other hand, if some of the behavior does match your values, or the person as a whole matches your values. So and you think, okay, well, there's room for growth, room for negotiation. Then I guide you through that as well in terms of what that looks like. So yeah, that's it.
You have any social media handles or anything they can find you at?
Yeah, you can find me at Dr. Florencia _, mostly on Instagram and YouTube. I post free content videos on there on a weekly basis. So, if you want some nuggets and gems in terms of relationships, dating, personal development, confidence building, all of that lovely stuff, then you can find it on there. And you can find me on other socials, but I'm not that active on the other ones. It's mostly Instagram and YouTube.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest here at a Sisters Love podcast. And we're so grateful for the insight and information that you gave us today. And I am so grateful for you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lovely conversation.
Well, that's it for today's episode of a Sisters Love podcast. But before we end, I would like to invite you to our new support group. In this group, you'll get access to exclusive resources. You'll get support on your healing journey, and you'll get to meet some of those amazing guests like the one we just had. If you are looking for more support and you need the actual resources during your healing journey or your self-love journey, then this is the group for you. So all you have to do is join our mailing list. Once you join the mailing list, you'll get instant access into the support group. All you have to do is click this link under this video that says a Sisters Love support group. Click the link and get into the support group right now. Well, that's it for this episode. And till next time, signing out, your Sisters Through Love, Rose Jones. Bye-bye.